Well, that went well. So here we are, guys. It is official. Novak Djokovic officially out of the Australian Open. This is Pete from Crunch Time Coaching reporting from very, very cold Atlanta, Georgia. It may even snow today, but that does not take away from the fact that the Georgia Bulldogs are the national champions. But that is not why you're tuning in. You're tuning in most likely because you're a tennis fan and you feel one way or the other about Novak Djokovic being kicked out of the 2022 Australian Open. Some people think Novak got exactly what he deserved, and other people think that he was given a raw deal. I have very mixed emotions about the situation. Overall, I feel very strongly that it was handled terribly. It was a mess. And I guess maybe now the mess is over and we can start to focus on tennis. So as you're coming in, let me know what you think about the whole situation. Should Novak have been allowed to play? Did the right thing ultimately end up happening where Novak is sent home? There is a possibility now that the most winning player at the Australian Open will not be allowed to come back into Australia for 3 years because he is being deported. And I guess that is the law. However, just like every law, there's always wiggle room to where they could change their mind and allow him to come back. The thing is he'll have to get vaccinated in order to enter the U.S. So maybe Novak Djokovic, who was looking very, this is Ollie Payton, by the way. We'll put his comment here. So if you guys want to put some comments in, I will put it right there so we can read and get everybody's thoughts. So yeah, that's another thing too. I mean, at the end of 2021, and Novak was not vaccinated. Think about that. The vaccine was available. Wasn't that big controversy last year? To the best of my knowledge, that he was going around unvaccinated. And he won 3 out of the 4 majors and tied Rafa and Roger with 20. And it was looking like a shoo-in, like this guy's going to win 25. He's going to win 26. Well, now a lot of people are saying, hey, if he doesn't get vaccinated, he's not going to be able to play anywhere. I do believe that the French Open, Paris has already said he can play there even if he's not vaccinated. Now, I still think you have to pick Rafa Nadal as the favorite in France, but Novak certainly could win there. Here we go. I think they did the right thing kicking him out, but 3-year suspension would be too much. So Eddie says, I think they did the right thing kicking him out, but a 3-year suspension would be too much. Guys, keep chiming in. I will put your comments here. Justice, in my opinion, law should be equal for all, be it a refugee, citizen, immigrant, or a tennis star. So you think they made the right decision. Bummer, but what do you think of the favorite, who's number one favorite now that Novak is out? I would say you got to go with Medvedev. I would say Medvedev, Jason, I would think is the favorite. He's been the guy who shows he's willing to win a major, stand toe-to-toe with these players, and he, took out Novak at the U.S. Open. So you got to go with Medvedev. Next up, I would probably go with Alexander Zverev, who has also played incredible in 2021. This is the first Grand Slam that Rafa has played without Federer and Djokovic playing. Not that I'm picking the Dow to win. Okay. This next comment, I don't understand, but maybe somebody out there does. So, yeah, guys, keep commenting. I will put your comments, as you can see right there. Let me put our comment here. Ridiculous overreach by the government mandating vaccines for the sniffles. Well, I would. Now, it's debatable whether it's an overreach. There's certainly a lot of hypocrisy going on everywhere in the world, not just in Australia. I would call it more than the sniffles, since we've had 5 million deaths due to COVID in just a couple of years. So I think we have to take it more seriously than that. I myself am double vaccinated. However, if you've been watching my live streams, I do see Novak's side of it. Here's a couple of things just up front how I see Novak's side of it. Number one is, yes, if you're just talking numbers. And one thing that's kind of interesting, I talked to a doctor who's a friend of mine, and he hit it perfectly. He's like, look, when you get into medicine, it's not about 100% ever. It's always a percentage game, meaning that nothing is 100% effective. It's the percentages. And for the percentages of the world, the more of us that get vaccinated overall, it's better. Especially when it comes to, if you do get it, you are less sick and you're less likely to have to go to the hospital and you're less likely to die. That's what the numbers are showing. However, for certain individuals, the vaccine is not out to be a good thing. Namely, Jeremy Chardy. If we're just sticking in the tennis world, guy is from France. He's had an amazing career, and he decided for the good of the world he would get vaccinated. And after he got his vaccinations, he lost all his strength and energy and had to cancel his 2021 season. Now, we know Novak earlier in his career had trouble breathing on the court. He had trouble. Lots of people call him weak, soft, calling for the trainer too quick, as you can see a very famous Andy Roddick clip right before he's going to play him at the U.S. Open. And he somehow figured out the right formula of what should go in his body. And he was able to turn that all around and go from somebody that people called soft to somebody you don't want to face on the court when it comes to long matches. So I could see how he could be afraid to take the vaccine and mess with his formula that he's figured out for himself. So that is, my defense of Novak. Here we go. Nadal will not win number 21. Do you think Nadal will not win number 21 here or anywhere? That'll be interesting. Obviously, there's lots of health concerns around Rafael Nadal. You don't. Oh, now Novak. I guess you don't know Novak. This will make him stronger. He will win 6 more slams at least. Well, maybe, but also if he doesn't get, I think he feels pretty strongly he's not going to get vaccinated. And if he's not allowed to play at a tournament, he can't win a tournament. So this will be very interesting to see where he's allowed to go play. We have Go Vamos Rafa. Let's get another one. Officially, Australia has turned out to be an authoritarian country on par with North Korea. Now, you see, now I think we're going too far when we say statements like that. One thing that's kind of interesting and curious, interestingly enough, came to his defense, and he talked about the hypocrisy. He talked about how he sees, and he's been very, outspoken on COVID and said people should get vaccinated, but he also has said his own government has been they're hypocrites in what he was saying, in that, they had the Australian people locked up for a couple of years. So you can see how the Australian people are saying, hey, why are we letting this tennis star in when I couldn't let my family in, when I couldn't go out, when there were such strict regulations? Why are we letting this guy in to play tennis? Especially if you don't care about tennis, I certainly see that side of it. But if you notice in Australia, go look at the chart. Maybe I'll pull it up later. The Australian COVID numbers, to their credit, were basically flatline. Everybody's like saying, well, look at Australia. Their numbers are spiking. So obviously their mandates didn't work. Well, their numbers were basically flatline. But listening to Nick Kyrgios the other day, he said, what are we so concerned about Novak for? Everybody's walking the streets now. All the restrictions have been lifted, and their numbers have spiked. So since they've lifted the restrictions, their numbers have gone through the roof. Plus, you got to also consider there's an international tournament going on, a lot of people coming in. That's probably also contributing to the numbers going haywire with the Omicron virus. So, is Novak really this Novak character coming in with his unvaccinated body? Is that really, that big a deal? Or it just doesn't look good and the people are pissed off, and that's why you decide to send him home after you invited him in? That's my whole issue with this thing. Kyrgios is always a contrarian no matter what the issue. That's true, Eddie. But I thought the little golden nugget I thought he let is that within that, because I did look at the chart of the Australian Open COVID numbers because I was curious. I was curious. And the numbers were flatlined for like a year plus, like no COVID cases. And now it's through the roof. And so you have somebody who's in Australia saying basically like everybody's walking the streets now, like there's nothing going on, like there's nothing wrong. And now the numbers are spiking. So, how do you handle this? It's tough to say what the right thing to do is. It's very tough. I mean, are you going to keep your country in lockdown forever to keep the numbers down? I don't know the right answer to all that kind of stuff. Of course, people don't want to be locked down forever. Novak had COVID, which is better than vaccines than in the last 6 months. Again, I'm not a doctor. I can't say that's for sure or not. Novak will never back down from his belief. Reminds me of Eddie Liddell in the 1924 Olympics, Paris Olympics. I completely agree with you, Peter, and ignore Kyrgios. Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'm not here to say Kyrgios is some, great scholar. I'm just saying it's interesting that one little thing that he said about how now in Australia they've lifted a lot of these strict regulations, but yet Novak is still the lightning rod in all of this. It just kind of doesn't match up. Pfizer CEO is not vaccinated and couldn't get into Israel and was denied entry. That's kind of interesting. The Pfizer CEO. That is weird. A good question. Why is the Pfizer CEO not vaccinated? That's a very good question. Those spike in numbers would be stratospheric if the number of people who got vaccinated were few. That's true. So according to 92% of their country is vaccinated, and that's why there's such the uproar is like, look, 92% of us are vaccinated. And a lot of the players also like, I can't say a lot. Tsitsipas came out and said, look, we all got vaccinated. Now we're being made fools of. We come here vaccinated trying to follow the rules. And now are you going to let Novak play? Well, obviously they didn't let Novak play. So it was a good thing. Tsitsipas, that you got vaccinated so you can play because it didn't work out for Novak. Putting aside all the drama, like what if Novak just took a shot instead of all this drama? I think that he is afraid of the shot. And of course, I am just guessing because I don't know. I don't know Novak Djokovic, and he hasn't been very clear, at least in my knowledge. There hasn't been a big public video of Novak addressing everybody's concerns on why he doesn't want to get vaccinated. My guess is that when he was younger, he had trouble breathing on the court. He finally figured out the perfect formula for his body, and he doesn't want to go against anything that would contradict what he, thinks should be going in his body. And so he's afraid to get it. That's my guess. Novak is my hero. And I here's another thing too. Everybody is saying, "Oh, Novak's one big liar. He's just an evil person. He's lying, and he was hanging out with this person and that person and doing all these terrible things, even though he knew he had COVID, like he's out there trying to spread COVID to everybody, like he's some evil person." If you look at the events he was at charity events. If he knew he kind of claims he claims he didn't know he was positive yet, but he had a suspicion he was positive. It was not a good decision. Novak certainly is not without fault here, especially if you want to go play, not being vaccinated. It's not a good look to go hang out with a bunch of kids en masse when you might be COVID positive. And according to you, which some people question if he was, you might be COVID positive. Not a good look, not the smartest thing to do when you want to go to Australia, who's got the strictest regulations in the world, and go play. That was a very dumb, boneheaded move, whether you love Novak or you don't. And I love Novak. But let's take a look what he was doing. He was there hanging out with tennis kids. He was doing something, trying to be doing something good, And then the next day, when he did know he was COVID positive, according to him, he had his mask on, he was social distance, and he didn't want to let the journalists down. And one thing you cannot debate: Novak gave $1 million to Australia with the wildfires. He won a tournament in Serbia, gave all his prize money when Serbia was going through all the floods. He's given money to everybody. I mean, this guy is not a bad. Everybody wants to criticize Novak and say how bad he is for the world because he's not vaccinated. He's given a lot more money to everybody, including me, on this broadcast than anybody ever will on this broadcast who wants to criticize him and call him a terrible person. He's given a lot more money to the world and had a lot more influence for good in the world than walking around unvaccinated. Now, it's certainly as a role model, many people can debate, it's not good for him, to show that he doesn't believe in the vaccination, but he just doesn't. Okay. Let's see here. I think the trouble started when the AO decided to give Novak the exemption without consulting the Australian government. Plus, his statements about the whereabouts prior to Australia were contradictory. Okay, this is a great statement, and I think we need to stand this statement and really analyze, because this is where the trouble is for me. I have said on previous broadcasts, hey, the rules of my house are, if you want to come in my house with your shoes on and walk around my house, I don't have a problem with that. But other people, their rules of the house are, hey, if you're going to walk in this house, you've got to take your shoes off. I immediately respect that and take my shoes off so I can hang out. I'm not going to, fight that. Okay. I know it's not quite the same correlation, but if you're Novak Djokovic, that, hey, in Australia, they have very strict regulations. They want you to be vaccinated to come play the Australian Open. So this. On the other hand, if you're Australia, hey, this guy who is the most winning tennis player ever in Australia in our biggest event of the year, where it's an international event, we know he does not want to get vaccinated and probably will not. So how can the Australian government, with such a big deal, not all be on the same page, from the tournament to the town of Victoria to the whole country? How could they have not have been on the same page beforehand and made a decision? There are no exemptions. Novak, don't even try it. It's not going to happen. You're not going to get in and play. So you either get vaccinated or you make a statement saying, you'll see everybody next year. That is the right thing that should have happened. That could have easily been avoided. And for people to say the Australian government, it's not their job, they didn't know, tennis is just this little thing, part of the thing, and it's not really a big deal, so how would they have known? Well, it obviously is a big deal to the Australian government. Otherwise, it wouldn't have gone this far to where once they gave them the visa, they stopped them, then they kicked them out, they put them in a detention center, then they approved them to play again, and then they had another hearing kicking them out. So obviously, it's a very big deal to them. So they should have avoided all this mess in the beginning. That was the biggest mistake. So this is a great comment by you. Great comment. All right, let me put some other comments. Okay, I'm so glad he was deported. I'm not glad he was deported. I'll say it right here, right now. I'm not glad the way it ended. I would have been fine if they would have said, Novak, you can't come over here, and he just didn't go in the first place. I would not have any problem with the Australian government if they said, these are the rules of the house. You know the rules, Novak. You're not coming in. I would have been fine with that. Why did they leave this big loophole that became so messy and then give him a visa? It's Novak Djokovic. How do you mess this up? How do you mess it up this bad? It'd be like doing this to Rafael Nadal at the French Open. It's a big mess up on their part. I don't think you can applaud the Australian government for the way they handled this. Okay, maybe with the popular opinion of the country as a whole, based on how they had to be locked down, thinks that the Australian government ultimately got it right and sent him away to try and be consistent for their people. But they certainly fumbled the football several times in this whole thing. No question. Novak is a great guy. Seriously, he has done some wrong opinions. That's all. That's how I feel. It's like Novak has stuck his foot in his mouth several times, didn't say the right thing, but he lives under a microscope, okay? Many people say dumb things. I'm sure in this broadcast, I'm going to say several stupid things or many things that a lot of people agree with. And some people think, oh, I don't like him. I don't like that he said this. I mean, that's just you can't live under a microscope and please everybody all the time. And, also sometimes you do some things that most people think was wrong. Nole would not go to Australia if someone from the tour did not have him. Yeah, exactly. They let him come. They gave him a visa, okay? It's not like he just showed up at the front door with no credentials. He went out on his terms and true to his principles. Yes, I mean, that's true. Whether they're right or wrong, Novak just doesn't want to get vaccinated, and he didn't bend. Everyone should be allowed to have their own opinions, like many Australians. Okay, so many Australians have the opinion. I'm sure there's millions of Australians who think it's great that Novak didn't ultimately be allowed to play. I think most Australians probably said, well, our government really messed that up. It's kind of embarrassing. But I'm sure a lot of people are happy that he got deported or wasn't allowed to play ultimately. And I'm sure there's millions of Australians say, I wish the guy would have played. We've been locked up. This is ridiculous. We are becoming an authoritarian society, which I don't think they are. But some people want to come at that angle. So I'm sure there's millions of Australians who also would have liked to see the guy play. So that's why it's tough. So you say that money can buy anybody, but I'm rich and I can do whatever I want. Sorry, but that is stupid. Who said that? Did I say that? I don't think I said that. Maybe somebody in the comments said that. Please exit the speculative arena. Value judgments are neither required or desired. Instead, focus on the known facts, whether or not Novak was in compliance with the requirements in effect. Well, the requirements in effect were if you had, and this is not a rule he made up. The requirements in effect were if you were tested positive for COVID in the last 6 months, you could get a medical exemption is what he applied for, what he was granted. He comes, he shows up to play the tournament. And he was very upfront about that he's not getting vaccinated. I know there's other things that kind of got in the way that certainly could have, where they really kind of got on him about he showed up at this public thing and that public thing. I'm not sure that has anything really to do, though, with, getting the exemption. So I don't know. Look, he's known this was a problem the whole time in the world to get vaccinated or to realize that they don't want him and just leave. Should have gone home. I mean, that's where I disagree. They allowed a medical exemption. It was something that people advised him on. I'm sure the Australian Open, somebody over there probably said, hey, Novak, we know you're not vaccinated, but did you know you can apply for a medical exemption? I mean, how would he find out about it unless somebody told him? We have medical exemptions you can apply for people in your situation. And he applied. So this is where I feel bad for Novak. Okay, now this is a great comment by Eddie Diaz. This was the perfect storm of bad judgments by all involved. I totally agree with you, Eddie, because the Australian government, as you clearly hear me saying, I think made terrible decisions along the way. If you didn't want him to play, you shouldn't have let him in the first place. And he is a big enough deal. I'm sorry for the people who say, well, it's not the Australian government's job to know this tennis player is coming. Yeah, it is their job. Otherwise, it wouldn't have gotten so big because they obviously made it their job and they ultimately kicked him back out after they let him in. They should have never let him in to begin with. So that's bad judgment. Novak wanting to come and play and getting COVID like he claims he had, which some people don't believe that he actually had COVID, but let's just take him at his word for it. If you have a suspicion that you go to a basketball event and people are testing positive and you're like, oh, I better get a test, but I want to go play the Australian Open in a month, and the regulations they had, it is not going to be a good look to go to charity events take pictures with your mask off while you're trying to figure out if you've got COVID or not. This was a terrible judgment by Novak. I don't think it necessarily makes him a bad person, but it was a bad decision. Why on earth do they have medical exemptions? And who else has a medical exemption and is still in the Australian Open? And who are they? We want to know their names. Victoria wants to know their names. I know there was one female who got to go over there and play. And then once the whole Novak situation blew up, they kicked her out too. So I'm sure she just loves Novak Djokovic at this point. But I believe there's like 5 players. So most of the players, 99.9% of the players have the vaccination. And that's what a lot of the players are saying. Nadal has been like, I feel for Novak, but it's like, we all knew that this is how you get over here and play. So for the good of everybody, why not just get vaccinated? Okay. Let's see here. He's no doubt the number 1 player, but he needs to respect the law and the land. Australian Open wanted to be a nice page of Novak. I don't know. They made a mess, and the Australian Open should be penalized for the carelessness. Well, I think everybody being penalized has already happened. I think the Australian government, I think they got to feel embarrassed from how this is being covered by everybody. Small fries like me, big media people. I mean, everybody's kind of saying, what the heck are you doing, Australian Open? What the heck are you doing, Australian government? And here's one thing I'll say. Oh, my buddy B2 wants to come up and get in the conversation. B2, what do you think of this total debacle of the Australian Open? What do you think? Should Novak have been allowed to play or not? Well, B2 said, in order for me to go back to my favorite place, this is absolutely true. B2 loves PetSmart, and his vaccinations ran out. And in order for him to go play with his best friend, Jackson, who he loves to play with, B2 had to get vaccinated to go back for the good of the other doggies. And so guess what I did? I know that the rules of PetSmart are you need to get your dog vaccinated. I don't think that I live in an authoritarian government because PetSmart requires vaccinations for dogs. And so the other dogs could be safe. I had to go get B2 vaccinated, which I did. And now he's back playing with Jackson. So there you go on that. Thank you, B2, for that incredible argument. That was amazing. Don't look at the number of people catching Omicron variant, but how many of them end up in the hospital and die from it. Wake up, Australian fellows. Your government is a tyranny. Now, one thing I can say about their government, who watched the hearing? Okay, first, there's this guy. I think he does a great job. His name's Cam Talk Tennis. Cam Williamson. He sounds like he might be from Australia, too. And he was trying to cover the hearing. And when he was reading what they were saying, he, first of all, he didn't understand what he was saying, which was clear. And it was just very jarbled, and there was not one coherent thought when Cam was trying to cover the hearing. And then all of a sudden, I look a couple of videos below, and I see the actual hearing. So I'm like, well, let me hear what they're actually saying so I can understand. And then I understood why Cam made no sense. These people, it's like 4 older dudes, made no sense. I know there's old English, but these guys, I'm telling you, did not put together one cohesive sentence. You couldn't, it was incomprehensible. You could not understand what they were saying. It would go something like this. And let me know if you watched it. In the matter of Mr. Djokovic, it appears that he may or may not have, in my opinion, there is the authority presumptively to decide if and when, according to the case of 1942, when it appeals to, like, I was like waiting, like, okay, when are you going to make a complete sentence that I can understand? Like, if I was Novak listening to this, after everything was over, I would probably turn to my lawyers and go, so can I play or not? Like, I didn't understand one word of what I didn't understand. Like, after they made their points, I was like, I don't understand. I still don't understand. Are you guys going to let them play? Or are you not going to let them play? And I'm not the smartest tool in the shed, but I'm telling you, if you listen to this, they literally would, their sentences were maybes and it might be and not be and to where you're like, okay, get to the point. Like, make your point. I want to find some comments and see if you guys saw this. No one's responding to what I'm saying. You're talking BS, amigo. I'm talking BS. Okay. What BS am I talking? Natural immunity gives you much immunity than vaccines. He was probably the safest player in the tournament. Maybe. I certainly, that's why I don't want to talk BS. I'm not a COVID expert. So, not a COVID expert. Nina, yes. We're afraid of it. Oh, I understand the situation, says Nina. So I guess there's like a little fight going on. Is that what's going on in the comment section? As in the USA, Australia is made of states and federal government. The state of Victoria made a mistake. The federal government had to get involved to clean up. Okay, I hear you, the chairman, but here's one thing. Don't you think if you are the federal government of Australia, you would have talked to Victoria and said, hey, how are we going to handle this? What are we going to do? No, you're not going to give any exemptions to anybody because then it's good. The federal government should have been involved before this all happened. It's not like they came and cleaned the mess. They weren't involved like they should have been in the first place. Okay, because this guy's a big deal. This is a big tournament. And look how much they got involved afterwards. So why couldn't they have just done it in the first place? I think they should have known what was going on in the first place. That's what I believe. No one ever wanted to stop him from playing this. He lied on his document. He went out and he was allegedly positive. He could have played if he wanted to. He messed up. I do believe that Novak messed up by going out in public. As far as the form that he filled out, that's debatable if he knowingly lied. I have filled out these forms before, and I can tell you when I'm filling them out, and I haven't traveled that much out of countries, but when I do have to fill out one of those forms, I am a little nervous. I am a little confused. I'm like, well, how am I supposed to answer this? So I can see somebody messing that up because according to Novak, he did not personally handle it. He had one of his buddies like do it for him. So you never know of their intelligence and all that kind of stuff. So I give Novak the benefit of the doubt there. B2 is kind of getting tired of this broadcast. He keeps coming to me like, hey, dude, walk me or do something with me. Should be called the Australian Select or the Australian Closed. Wow, wow, wow. Love you, dog. Yes, the dog is awesome, right? B2 is an amazing dog. Djokovic has the same dog. Is the dog okay? Cool. We're getting doggy questions. The doggy. Let's bring the doggy back. B2. Let's bring you back. You're getting questions. Okay. So B2, who is fully vaccinated to go to PetSmart, is a Havishon, Havanese Bichon, and he is an amazing buddy. See how he's holding my hands right now too. He's an amazing buddy. One thing that's kind of cool is I can bring him to a tennis lesson. And he runs right in his crate when I'm about to start the lesson. He'll run, he'll chase tennis balls. And then when it's time to start the lesson, he runs in his crate, which is amazing. So if you like B2, no matter what you think about the Novak Djokovic or the Australian government or whether he should or shouldn't play, if you like B2, like this video and consider subscribing because B2's in a lot of videos and I mostly just make tennis instruction videos. And after today's live stream, unless there's some other big Novak news and bombshell, we'll be covering the Australian Open and the matchups and the matches and what happens there. I don't think anything is going to do, outdo this, though. Yes, it was painful to listen to. It was painful to listen to. I kept tuning in, and I could listen for maybe 3 to 5 minutes, and I'm like, you didn't make one point, and then I would have to leave it. So yes, I agree with you. Oh, you listened for a few hours. How did you make it a few hours? May I know what breed your dog is? He's a Havishon. Exactly like that. LOL. The decision was made before the court. Obviously, the decision was made before the court. A lot of people want to know his breed. It went on for hours. Legal jargon, bro, not layman language. Okay, it was legal jargon. I hear you, legal. There was legal jargon in there, which I could have tried to decipher and get. But there was too many and they would go in one direction, not complete a sentence, go in another direction. I'm telling you, if you listen to it, it wasn't just legal jargon. It was incomplete thoughts. And they would go from one thing to the next, and there was lots of may not have, and then there was no finish to the sentence. It was really weird. I'm telling you, it was beyond legal jargon. It was beyond legal jargon. I watched and listened. I figured out their decision based on their facial expressions and body language. Exactly. Depends on how long ago. I don't know what that means. We are Aussies. We speak different language. Ha ha. But I've been hanging out. I've had Australian coaches, my friend. I've never heard it spoken like that. Did you listen to the hearing? Maybe that's how the older Australians talk. But I got to hang out. I got to interview Rod Laver, which is cool. John Newcomb, Fred Stye, Roy Emerson. They're all older Aussies. I understood them completely. I had an Australian coach growing up. I had a couple of Australian coaches growing up. I've never heard Australian people talk like that. I've been to the Australian Open, which I absolutely love. I love the Australian Open tournament. I love Rod Laver Arena. I just don't love the way this is all handled. That was the language of the law. Hard for us to understand. Well, the language of the law is incomplete sentences and incomplete thoughts. Go listen to it, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Natural immunity lasts for 2 weeks after having COVID. I think it is. It seems like it's getting shorter because I do know people who, and I don't want to put any misinformation. I'm not even going to complete the sentence, but all I'll say is I don't know. I'm not a doctor. Australia is disgusting. What a terrible place. Feel sorry for its brainwashed people. Everybody's just trying to deal with it the best we can. I think there were some shenanigans going on with Craig Tilley. Yeah, he's the guy who runs the Australian Open. Djokovic must leave and stop discussions. Well, here's Djokovic's last, which let me pull up. Let me share the screen. And let me read Djokovic's statement, which I thought was pretty classy after he went through such a terrible time, which, I like Djokovic overall. Let me just be very clear. I like Djokovic overall. And this is a statement from Novak Djokovic. Novak Djokovic's statement. I would like to make a brief statement to address the outcomes of yesterday's court hearing. I will now be taking some time off to recuperate before making any further comments beyond this. I'm extremely disappointed with the court ruling to dismiss my application for judicial review of the minister's decision to cancel my visa, which means I cannot stay in Australia and participate in the Australian Open. B2, will you be quiet? I respect the court's ruling, and I will cooperate with the relevant authorities in relation to my departure from the country. I am uncomfortable that the focus the past week has been on me, and I hope that we can all now focus on the game and the tournament that I love. I love that he said that. I would like to wish the players, the tournament officials, staff, volunteers, and fans all the best for the tournament. I mean, you just can't do any better than saying this if you're Novak. Although, really, if you're coming in unvaccinated, you knew there was going to be a lot of attention on you. I mean, can he be that naive to think he's just going to go in there and it's not going to be a big deal? Finally, I would like to thank my family, friends, team supporters, fans, and fellow Serbians for all your continued support. You have been a great source of strength to me. Okay, so I say well done, Novak, on that statement. I say good job on that, Novak. All right, let's see some of your other watching from Argentina. Sorry for Novak. Now, here's an interesting one. And I saw that there's, what is this? Ben Roethlisberger put this out, which I'm not sure if it's true or not true, but the deadline for filing for medical exemption was December 10th. He tested positive on December 16th. So what we don't know is that, you know, sometimes there's deadlines and then there's extensions to the deadlines. And then lots of times there's special treatment for somebody who's number one in the world, who has won the tournament 9 times. And, you know, should there be room for special treatment for somebody who's won the tournament 9 times? You know, that's debatable. But if you think Roger and Rafa don't get special treatment from time to time, you're kidding yourself, okay? If you win that much, you get special treatment. All the top players should walk. This would be their way of support. Come on, they're not going to walk, guys. They are not going to walk. And I don't think you have to put on the players to make them walk. They went and got vaccinated to play. So why are they going to walk? No way someone is messing those papers. They're experienced. You might be right. Okay. Dear, how is life and mood? Dear all, how is life and mood? I think I'm going to end this because I think we're kind of running around in circles. Thank you guys so much for watching. Why are they allowing COVID positive nurses to work with patients? Because they're overwhelmed. That's why. Okay. That's another thing too. The people who kind of like downplay how bad the virus is. My girlfriend is a doctor, and there's no denying that when things spike up, the healthcare system gets overwhelmed with people in the ICU. ICU is for very, very sick patients, and they are in the there's a COVID unit just for ICU patients, and it gets overwhelmed. So it does get very bad from time to time. So it is a very serious disease that we somehow have to figure out the right formula for. This is B2, and I sign off. B2 is growling at me every 2 seconds off camera, which means that he is tired of this broadcast. So I have to respect his wishes and figure out what he wants next. He might want to walk. He might want a treat. So I've got to make sure that we get that for B2. If you enjoyed this at all and are still watching, please like the video on your way out. It would make B2's day. He will give you a puppy kiss. B2, give them a puppy kiss. Okay. We'll see you guys later.